If there's one thing you're going to do a lot in ComServe, you are going to eat. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So if you're new here, thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure to like, comment and subscribe and click on that notification button to get a notification every single time that I post. We are on the road to 3K. Please make sure to share and subscribe and do all of those things. So today's video is gonna be a little chit chat situation, basically talking about my experience this year as a ComServe. So if you're interested, keep watching. Also, just a disclaimer, this is purely from my own experience, and yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. This is just my experience of ComServe. No experience is the same. Every hospital is different, from applying to placement announcements to moving in, living experience, social experience, work-life experience, like everything. I'm unpacking everything. First of all, let me start with application. I didn't do enough research when I was applying for hospitals. That's the first thing that I fumbled with. So I kept changing my choices because there wasn't a choice that I was 100% certain on. And at the time, I didn't know if I wanted to live in Joburg. At some point, I remember hearing from a lot of the ComServes who were ComServes at the time when I was still in varsity, and they were like, do not apply to Eastern Cape because you're not going to get your choice. They're just going to place you in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of rural what, in the middle of Islalin. So I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So I did my research. I didn't ask enough people. That's one thing you need to do. You need to talk to people. You shouldn't be going to the internet. I remember when I researched this hospital, I saw like a castle. Guys, that's not All Saints. That's not the All Saints that I know. We already know this. This is London. I'm within rural Eastern Cape, so I didn't do enough research, not nearly enough. A part of me remembers applying here as my first choice at first and then changing it. I ended up choosing a hospital. It was an Eastern Cape hospital, but I don't remember what my first choice was, which shows you that I was not certain enough on what my first choice was going to be anyways. So fast forward, we hear our placements. My friends get good hospitals. Oh, so excited. Then it comes to me. I froze. Personally, I was in denial. Like, I just was like, okay. I kind of just blocked it out, and I was like, you know what? Let me just look at the good things about it. Like, via saving, via being Islalin, like being very close to a lot of relatives. Yeah, I was like, let me look for the good in this. I spoke to a ComServe. I think she did her ComServe somewhere near Port St. John's. She was one of my like mentors, or mentats as we call them. And she was like really encouraging. She was very honest, but yeah, it was really encouraging to hear that, no, it's not that bad. Like, you can still find fun things. And I was like, okay, this isn't gonna be bad. I started getting pretty excited. I was like telling all my cousins, you know, that I'm coming this side. And yeah, they were all very worried for me. When I got here, I understood why. And I'll explain that in a minute. So cool, I arrive. We get to this house. It's kind of like, everything kind of feels very disorganized when we get there. I thought it would be a thing of, okay, you get your, okay, this is the house you're going to be staying in. This is the room you're allocated. But it was kind of like, the rooms that you're supposed to be, like the rooms you're supposed to be staying in aren't ready yet. So rather go and stay here, here and here until your rooms are ready. But that ended up being a story for more than a month. So the place that we stayed in at first, right, was hygiene-wise a mess. And it's a carpet. Do you understand how carpet just absorbs all the dust and all of the dirt? So it was, yeah, it wasn't good for my health at all. And when it comes to accommodation, that was a whole struggle. Luckily we got moved to a house which was much nicer, very comfortable, very homey. I remember the first time coming in, and it just felt so warm and so homey, and it just felt like, you know, when you just feel a good vibe about a place. And it really, yeah, it's really done some good. Like, I got so much better mentally just by moving to a different place. But we stayed there, you know, even though I was there, it still hadn't hit me just yet. I think we have a Hardy nest right by the house. So if you hear Hardy, you know why. Like, I don't deal with things well. Like, I push them to the side and I keep on just, either I pretend like they don't exist, or I'm just like try and look for the good but never deal with how the bad makes me feel. So I really struggled the first couple of months. Like a lot of the experiences and the emotions that people felt, you know, going into lockdown, I felt in the beginning of the year, because there's nothing for entertainment besides, you know, things that you'll do in the house. When you're leaving the house, you're going to get groceries, or you're going to the bank, or you're going to go do something that's essential. And the things that are essential are the things that are nearest to us, that are like, what, an 8K drive. But when it comes to anything that has to do with entertainment, you're going to drive at least an hour. So if you want the mall, if you want a full pharmacy like Clicks or like Dis-Chem, if you want restaurants, if you want Woolies, if you want Pick and Pay, if you want Checkers, if you want any shop that isn't Boxer and Spar and Sparks, you're gonna have to drive. So that was another thing. I was never a Woolies girl. I was always a Pick and Pay Checkers girl. So the only thing with Spar is that it's so expensive. It's so expensive. It's actually cheaper to go further for groceries. And the fact that Spar's there, Spar that's so expensive, I was like, So that was another thing, like just trying to figure out where to get my groceries. If there's one thing you're going to do a lot when it comes to, you are going to eat, you need to take care of your health. I didn't for the first 3 months. That's part of why I suffered. I'm sorry, I had to eat because I'm so hungry. There were a lot of issues with water, and there still are. Some days the water just isn't good, and then they have to switch off the water and fix everything at the water plant. So sometimes you'll open the tap and the water will come out brown, guys, like properly brown. I wasn't ready for that. You know, when it comes to water, it shouldn't be a privilege to have access to clean and safe water. That should be something that is a right for everyone. I remember the one time when the water was the worst, and that was also in the beginning of the year, when they had to cut the water. It was almost 2 weeks that there was no water. Obviously there's water in the tanks that they always go and fill up, so luckily you can always just go and get that water. And I always bought bottled water to drink from, because I got sick a couple of times when I tried to drink the tank water or the tap water. So luckily the bottled water was always there, but we always had to go and get water for those times that there was no water from the tanks, which I can't really complain about, because at least there was still water that I had access to. It's just that you had to walk quite a bit to go and get it, but we ended up making it like a thing. You see, like I really tried to take the negatives or the things that bothered me and make it a positive. Like, yeah, because to be honest, like I know that background that I come from is quite privileged, and I know that if I need to go and fetch water from the tanks, and that means that I'm gonna have safe water that I'm gonna be able to shower with, rather I do that, and I'll be happy to do that, rather than complain about the tap water that's dirty, you know. But that dirty tap water really, yeah, that really was a problem, and is and continues to be a problem every now and then. Yeah, something I think that I also didn't consider was signal issues. That's something that still, like, that bothers me a lot. I mean, in Joburg, you don't ever have issues with signal cutting. You don't have any issues with that in Cape Town either. The signal is always stable. So when you get to a place where the signal, like, literally will just cut out of nowhere if the weather changes too drastically, like, it's so frustrating. Like, the amount of times that I've had to make a video post later because it was too rainy, or it was too windy, or it was too hot, or it was too cold on that specific day. Therefore, the signal cut because of the weather, or because of load shedding. It's the most frustrating thing. So obviously the whole thing with accommodation had to do with doctors' quarters, or living in the healthcare workers' accommodation. So we always have electricity. When there is load shedding, then the signal cuts, so you don't have any cell service. Sometimes, or most of the time, Vodacom has 3G when MTN has nothing, which is nice because at least then there's some sort of signal if you need to send an emergency message, or you need to post something quickly, or you just want to, you know, download some series, or just want to scroll aimlessly through Instagram, then you can do that. But like via YouTube, I cannot post when the signal is out. And when it gets very hot, like when I first moved here, the signal cut a couple of times. Sometimes it would be like a week at a time, and then it would come back only like midnight for a couple of hours, and then it would be gone again. So yeah, the lack of signal is another thing I was never ever ready for. But yeah, you deal with it and you find other ways to deal with it. And it's also, it teaches you that, you know, you must just live in the moment. You don't need to be glued to your phone, you don't need to be glued to social media. Spend time with the people that are around you. Rather, don't eat watching TV, don't eat watching series. Go eat with the people that you love and be switched off from social media. Like, just find ways to still enjoy life. Plan. It's forced me to sometimes, when I feel like the signal might be out, to post a video and premiere it. And that's why I love the premiere option, because it allows me to do those kinds of things. I would get back and just be in my room and like just not be around people that much. And yeah, I didn't take it well. And it's so funny because like I did take a while to like adjust, and so did all of my housemates, which I'm very close to now. Like basically go, guys. Yes, go. You don't understand go until you come to you don't understand go until you come here. Like we were going through it, and we were all going through it individually. We didn't know that we were all struggling. I know myself, and I know this year put me in a very negative mind space. And I remember even just saying it to one of my housemates. I think it was probably Umpilo or Vince, or both of them, I don't know. But I remember just saying like, I feel like I've become so negative here. I never used to be this negative. I used to, you know, if things go wrong, you know, even when I got placed here and I didn't want it, I was still, you know, looking for the positive. But I felt like at some point there were just so many bad things that would happen and keep happening that like I just became so negative. And like I really, it's like mindset changing is something that I'm really trying, like I'm working really hard on, and I've really worked on like this year, because this year showed me flames. And it showed me that when things are tough, I can tend to be very negative and very self-loathing. Woe is me, like just not good, instead of just accepting what's going on, dealing with it and moving forward. And that's something that I need to learn to do, because I don't accept what's going on, I don't deal with it, therefore I don't get to move forward, because I dwell on things and I try and push them away. So that's made this year even tougher. Mentally also, there's a lot of things that I had to deal with this year, which you're forced to deal with when you're living in an area that's literally in the middle of nowhere. So it's really hard to distract yourself with other things or with other people. So it forced me to deal with a lot of hard things that I didn't want to or hadn't yet dealt with, which I think in essence was a good thing. Like, I think what made it so much better was a lot of the permanent staff who are there are like so nice and like do social things and always wanting to do stuff just to make it better, because they also know how it is here, especially for someone who's moving here for the first time and for comsos who are going to be there. It's like, it's a lot to adjust to, and it's just a lot to adjust to. So yeah, so they made it like very nice. Like we would have braais and things, like, so they were very welcoming. If there's one thing I've had a lot of this year, it's meat. So because almost every other week there's been a braai, hey, that's like our way of socializing, and it's like pretty cheap. Yeah, can pitch 100 rand and have a proper braai, salads, everything included. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Like guys, if there's one thing that I've gotten good at this year, is making potato salad. I've never made so much potato salad in my life. I've never made so much chakalaka in my life than I have this year. Whenever I'm at a braai, I'm always like the designated person for salads. So yeah, that's been fun. But also, I know it seems like I'm the most social person, but I can be very, very introverted, and I can get very, just being in a different environment with a lot of different people, I take a while to warm up to people sometimes if I'm not super comfortable in an environment as yet. If I'm very comfortable in an environment, it's very easy for me to make friends. Like everyone adjusts to different environments differently, and yeah, I didn't take it well. And it's so funny because like I did take a while to like adjust, and so did all of my housemates, which I'm very close to now. Like basically go, guys. Yes, go. You don't understand go until you come to you don't understand go until you come here. Like we were going through it all. We were going through the most, and we were all going through it individually. We didn't know that we were all struggling. No, that's the thing that like I'm so shook about, and I really consider my housemates family. But back then we barely spent time with each other. Yeah, and we're all just like really feeling homesick and missing our families and missing all of the things that we used to. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed just doing more wholesome things. I love how beautiful Eastern Cape is, so instead of going to, yes, I would have loved to go to a bunch of restaurants for fun, but instead of doing that, I get to explore different areas, different parts of nature, and I've really been enjoying that lately. We've just gotten back into starting to do that again. We went on our first trip in March, and then Corona happened, and then we just didn't go on any trips. So I'm really excited to start exploring again for the last 2 or so months that I have. I'm sure you'll see the next vlog that I have. We literally just decided that we wanted to go to, but I still really miss that consistency of being able to do things. There's weekends where I literally am really unhappy because I just feel like I can't, like there's nothing to do, and it's you feel so restricted. It's like I hate that feeling, and it really messes with me. Yeah, it's very hard, it's very isolating. I'm grateful for this experience, but it's also not been easy. I think that's what I'm trying to show. Like, you can have a lot of good memories and have an amazing year, but still have it be as challenging as this year was. Not to mention the COVID scare that we got, guys, we had a COVID scare. We had to self-isolate, all of that. We got tested. There were 2 or 3 scares, but I was only involved in one. So yeah, that was pretty scary. But by the grace of God, I don't know how I didn't get the virus. To be honest, I should have. In the work environment that I was in, sanitizing, washing hands, wearing a mask, wipe all surfaces between each patient. When you get into the office, you need to wipe everything down. There was a lot that has to be done. Yeah, being a healthcare worker and an essential worker during that time is also very mentally draining and very mentally taxing, because I don't think anyone was ever ready for a global pandemic to happen. Second of all, for it to happen in your ComServe year, it's just an added stress. Luckily, we were living like as ComServes in a place like in our accommodation, so we didn't have to worry about spreading it as badly because we all work in a similar work environment, even though we're in different stations throughout the work environment, and there's less of a worry of like spreading it to a loved one because all of our family is away from here. But it was very scary still, like especially during the time when the infections among healthcare workers was going up. You guys know, via PPE, things are always a little bit shaky. Yeah, PPE was pretty terrible. I mean, it was still PPE, but it was not. Some of them looked kind of like raincoats. I don't know. But healthcare workers started testing positive, and healthcare workers that were very close to me, someone that I work with in my exact office, tested positive, and I was lucky enough to have gone away during that time. If we were in very close contact with each other, which we would have been if I wasn't on leave during that time, I would have also contracted the virus. So it was a blessing that I didn't. And the last day that she had worked, it had been the weekend, and you know, on hard surfaces, Corona after 48 hours, it's not there. So I was very fortunate that by God's grace, I didn't get the virus. But that was scary to know that someone so close to me had gotten it. Yeah, also losing a family member this year was not easy, and not being able to go to the funeral, that really hit me hard, because it feels good to have that closure to be at the funeral and say goodbye, and not getting that, it really is not nice. And then when it comes to like work life, it's so nice because I mean, there's ComServes, so there's a whole bunch of us, and we all get along very well, and we spend a lot of time together. I think especially as the allied health team, we all get along very well. That I appreciate a lot. This is something that any healthcare professional can relate to, who is not a medical officer. So what we kind of deal with is doctors that maybe don't know what to refer for each of our professions, so they don't know exactly what to refer for a dietitian or for an OT, or you know, because I don't know, for whatever reason, or they just forget. Like, you have to do ward rounds, you have to see patients, and so you have to see patients a lot even if you haven't gotten referrals, because screen. Obviously, it's always good to build a good relationship with the doctors in the different wards and try and make sure that people don't go unhelped or unnoticed, because that can happen very, very easily. I think what I can say, when I first moved, I didn't realize just how small the hospital was. So that was something that I did kind of struggle with, because I felt like a lot of the times, and I think also at some stage I started to get very demotivated because I felt like I kept getting the same patients. You know, people who do ComServe in bigger hospitals get to do rotations in different wards with different conditions. Maybe they'll be in the renal ward, which is for people with kidney diseases, or they'll be in the ICU, or in peds, or in maternity, or in NICU, or you know what I mean? There's a variety of places where they can just, you know, for that certain amount of time they can focus on that and then get exposed to a lot of different types of patients. In my setting, I know for a fact that I have not been exposed to nearly as many patients as I was in varsity from just clinical practice than I did this year, because the scope of patients is so much smaller. It's like I haven't had a fistula patient, I haven't had patients with a lot of gastroesophageal diseases. I've had 3 enteral nutrition patients. So like, yeah, it's really tough when you don't get to practice in those different areas. Like in a small hospital, the dietitian does a lot of the ordering and deals with the procurement, and you work with the budget and you find out which, you know, types of products you want to order. Obviously I knew that that's what dietitians did, but like I didn't know that I would be involved in in that kind of admin. So that was also something that I had to figure out and learn, and it wasn't difficult. It was just like, you know, it was something I had to learn. I think one thing that I was very bad with in the beginning was I didn't take enough like lunch breaks, or like I would just keep seeing patients. Taking lunch is something that is like sometimes a little bit of a topic in the health sciences world, but yeah, I eventually learned that you do need lunch, or otherwise you will burn out. Yeah, it also taught me that like I'm not Xhosa, hey, like this Xhosa is not it. It is not it, guys. You understand? Having patients come in having patients come in and you're trying to explain something and they're like, yo, andikuva sis, kutending atu tethi Zulu. I'm just like, yo, like, because my mom is Zulu, my dad's Xhosa, so it's like sometimes I mix things, and sometimes I say things like with closer things with a Zulu accent or Zulu phrasing or Zulu pronunciation. But I realized, yeah, it's closer. I always knew it was not where it needs to be. At least Ngobu is a lot better, so I like that. I guess that's a positive thing. I think another thing that you get exposure to is losing patients in hospital, which was very hard for me at some stage, especially when it came to severe acute malnutrition, SAM, or what they used to call kwashiorkor. Losing them, like after you've literally done everything by the book, and still it wasn't enough. Like that's the hardest thing, because one thing you guys don't know, hey, like I'm very open to, you know, alternative medicine, traditional medicine. My ears is closer, but after this year, it just showed me that I was actually just speaking to one of my friends, and she's like a professional nurse, and I think like a way that she puts it, and I think this is just from our perspectives, right, as healthcare professionals, because of what we see from people who have taken specific ones, is that back in the day we used to eat a certain way. This is how she puts it, like, this is all Snesip. Back in the day, we used to eat a certain way. The climate was a certain way. Now things are different. We don't eat the same. The climate isn't the same. We have things like acid rain. We live very differently. Our bodies don't move the same. The soil isn't the same. A lot of things about the environment are just not the same. So what we used to use may not work as effectively, and I've seen that so much with so many of these sort of traditional medicine. Example number 1, and probably the one that breaks my heart the most, plate. It's supposed to be a traditional medicine. You give it to the kid around 2 months or so. Now, what I've seen happen is these kids go into toxicity. What I found was that a lot of the babies, actually all of the babies who I lost, who were malnourished, had toxicity due to plate. So what it does is basically just messes with your entire body. There's a lot of education that we do on it, and there's a lot more advocacy that was supposed to be done this year, but due to COVID, obviously we couldn't do that. But now that restrictions are a little bit softer, I think it's something that is very necessary, because like at some point, I remember there was 1 week where I lost a patient almost every day, and it was like, you know, when it seems like someone's getting better and then they just deteriorate the one day and then they're gone. That happened almost every day, and it never gets easy losing patients. And obviously from nutritional management perspective, the medical aspects also need to be solved, and if they struggle to solve them, obviously that can lead to the patient just not coping and not making it. So yeah, barely make it through the 10 steps with most patients. Barely made it through the 10 steps. Yeah, that's something that's been really tough. Yeah, I'm even just thinking of specific babies that I was just like, oh, like when I got back from my leave in September, I remember just like being like, okay, I really, please let this baby have made it. And I remember asking my colleague if the baby had made it, and she was like, she didn't make it. And I was just like, it's like so frustrating, you know. So sometimes nutritionally you do everything that you can, and medically the patient's condition is just not good at all. So yeah, that's something that I've struggled with a lot. Another thing is the lack of resources. You have to be very creative, and you have to work with what your hospital has. Now, resources was something that we did not have much of. You're waiting for other products to come in through an order that's taking literally the longest time ever. You have to be creative, and my creativity meant going and mixing products and mixing supplements for patients with the powder versions that were available, because I found that sometimes if I allocated it to someone else, it just wouldn't really happen. So yeah, I ended up going and mixing supplement feeds for patients, and that was something that I made my responsibility because I wanted to make sure that the job was done. Luckily now all the feeds are here, but there's still struggles that we have with milk or milk orders, like things take forever at district level. I guess it just teaches you patience, and to just accept sometimes there's some things that aren't going to go smoothly, and that you're going to keep having to follow up on, and that's fine. I think it's also taught me to have a backbone and not to take nonsense, because sometimes there are things that happen outside of your control that you can't blame yourself, and that people will be upset at you about, when it's actually like a displaced anger, and you need to understand that and not take things personally. And that's what this year has also taught me. Another thing that still very tough, like to this day, is being away from my twin brother. Mind you, we've never been in a separate city. It was really hard when my older brother moved to Cape Town. I remember crying when he moved to Cape Town. Yeah. But yeah, when he moved to Cape Town, I remember just being really sad, because and then obviously when I moved to Cape Town to go and study, that was quite tough to be away from my parents. So the homesickness was quite hectic. But I got used to that. Like when I was here, I missed my parents, I missed home. But I think it was more the specifics about home that I would miss. For example, like the water that's clean, or constant signal, mom's cooking, things like that. And my dad's hugs, my mom's hugs, like those are the things you miss. But I had been away from them before for a decent amount of time. So that wasn't as hard as being away from my twin brother or Abo, because that was the first time that we were ever apart. Like we've been in the same province and like lived in different parts of the city, but it's always been like 20 minutes away, you know what I mean? And it was the first time that we were actually in completely different provinces. So that's still hard to this day. Yeah, because I knew like if I was having a really tough time, I could just get up and go to him. I could get an Uber, I could find a friend who's going to Cape Town. There's always people going to Cape Town. But living here, yeah, I'm not gonna get emotional. I'm gonna get emotional. That was really hard. It's still really hard now. And I don't admit it to myself enough. I tell him a lot though. Oof. So that's also been really tough. And I think, when people in your life, when you're both going through a lot of things, it helps to have each other there and be there for each other. But when you're not physically there, it can be really tough. And I think that's something that we can all relate to, especially during this COVID time, just being away from each other. Long distance with my family, it just hits so differently. I think there's a lot of things about this year that have been tough. I think being away from family has been tough. I think being Islalin, where like there's a lot of things that aren't fair, that people don't have access to, is really tough to see and experience through other people and through especially patience. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's also just made me so much more grateful for the things that I have, but also like everyone should have access to certain things, and those basic needs aren't always met for the majority of South Africans, which is something that obviously needs to change. And I hope to be one of those people who can help changing that. But yeah, it's been a hard year, guys. I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah, that's why I felt like it was pretty appropriate to share this with you guys, because I think on social media it's easy to see or to think everything is perfect and everything's going great, but the reality of my ComServe experience was not what I was expecting, and it wasn't what I actually wanted, but it was what I needed. And sometimes you're put in situations for you to grow, and they're uncomfortable situations, and they're situations that will push you and push you and push you, but you know, diamonds are made under pressure. So I'm a diamond, you know what I'm saying? No, I'm kidding. There's a lot of things, like there's a lot of advice that I could give from my personal experience. So if you'd like a video on like tips for ComServe, especially if you're doing it in a rural setting, because I can only speak on my experience, then comment down below. Let me know if you would like me to do a video on that. I just want to give you guys the content that you want to see, while also giving you the content that I am passionate about. Yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know. Anyways, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you really liked this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and click on that notification button to get a notification every time that I post. And I'll see you in the next video.